Hello viewers, welcome to Val's Kitchen, and I'm going to be your host for the day. My name's Chef Trevor, or Chef Knight. So the dish that we're going to prepare today is going to be pasta. Some pasta. How we're going to prepare the pasta is going to be pretty much just boiling it, and then we're going to do meatballs. Over here we have the minced meat, we have garlic, we have the pilau, my own special pilau masala mix, dhania, rosemary, a bit of butter, and an onion. This is salt that's going to unify everything. Over here is going to be the sauce that I'm going to make. The sauce is mainly going to be tomatoes with a bit of onions, garlic, dhania or coriander, and thyme. So we're going to blend all these ingredients together. This is going to be the sauce, so we're going to put it all over here. But at first, we're going to start mixing these things together in the bowl. So we already have the mincemeat inside. We mix it. This is half a kilo of mincemeat that we're going to use. And then we're going to put in the garlic. This is half of a garlic, what's it called? The plume. So like about five cloves. So we're going to put it, mix it with this. So with the onion, we're going to have to chop it up into very nicely fined cubes. This is what we call chopped onions. It's not So some of the tricks that I usually have for chopping onions are, you see the first way I chop this half, you can slice them in juliennes. Juliennes are usually these long strips. That's what we call julienne. But if you want them chopped, you can either do them julienne first, then chop the juliennes into smaller pieces. That is something that I'm pretty effective at. But if you don't want that, there's also this other method where you slice the onion, but not all the way down. So at least the onion gets held together. So you mix up the garlic with the onions with the mincemeat. So after this, I also have some eggs over here that I mixed with the pasta. So with this half a kilo, I'd advise like around 1 egg or 2. So we're gonna let's try 1 egg, and then, eggs for cooking are usually used as a binding agent. Let's put it here, and it's good to collect your stuff together. Add a bit of salt, and this not too much because also we're preparing sauce for the pasta, the spaghetti. So just put a bit of salt. Start mixing everything up. As you mix this up, don't forget you still have the main flavor for this thing, which is the rosemary. You just have to chop it up before we start rolling them into balls. So we add that also inside there. And a bit of the, this is now the pilau mix. The mix itself contains cinnamon sticks, cumin, and cardamom. I have blended them together to make a mix, my own special mix. So the butter that we're using over here is just to add to the stickiness of the meatball, because it needs to be, maintain its shape. So like when we bake it over here on the tray, it doesn't break apart. So now we start mixing it. It's good to use your hands. So always remember to like prepare everything prior to making your dish. Like per se, I've already pre-boiled my water for the spaghetti. So by the time everything is done, it's gonna be ready quickly. There's also another way to prepare meatballs if you're confident in that, which is deep frying it, but I prefer baking. So you put the first one. So what we're gonna do now is just toss it into the oven. Remember, you have to preheat it. You can't just toss it like this. It's gonna cook unevenly if you wait for the oven to heat. So if you're blending the whole tomato, there's no point of using any waste, like getting rid of any part of the tomato. If you're blending everything, every part of the tomato is edible. Around 6 or so tomatoes. So I usually advise having more tomatoes, significantly more tomatoes than the onions, because it's gonna make the sauce thicker. If you avoid, if you're one of the people who avoid using tomato paste, if you prefer organic, completely organic ingredients, then the more tomatoes you use, the thicker the sauce is gonna be. So we're gonna put those, and then these are around almost 10 cloves of garlic. I'm gonna mix it inside here, and also the coriander a bit. We're gonna split a bit of the coriander on the side, just a tiny bunch, so that this will be the garnish to make the food look nice when you plate it. So the coriander, we're also gonna blend it together with everything else, and also the chopped up thyme. This other thyme that I've put over here is just gonna be what we're gonna use to also make the food look nice. That's why I've left them in the strands like that. So what I advise is usually using oil, because you're gonna use oil to cook. There's no point of using water. Water is gonna lighten the sauce. The oil is gonna keep it thick. So just add some more oil. As that goes on, remember, your station usually has to be clear. So let's start. If you see nothing's moving, and if you don't want to add more oil, because you know also oil is not good for your health. Too much oil is not good for your health. You can also add a bit of water, it doesn't hurt, just to make the blending go smoother. So you don't really bother yourself with trying and adjust everything. So you make sure everything is smooth. So we can just let that sit. So with the sauce, you don't necessarily have to put oil to cook it, because you know it already has the oil in it. You already blended with it. But I also like putting butter, because you know butter is a nice flavor, another touch to the ingredients that you have. And also if you don't, you can also put the salt as it cooks, or you can blend it with the sauce that we already prepared over here. You can either blend it with it, or as it gets ready, you can also mix the salt with it. So this sauce is basically what we call a concassé. A concassé pertains mainly, it's a tomato type of sauce. It's tomato, and you saute the onions. Saute basically means you lightly fry them. but then I didn't do that, so I just blended everything together. We don't necessarily have to, it's not by law.
I don't deny there's some strange evolutionary process going on, but mankind won't be destroyed. The fact that
You can always add a bit of water so you don't waste your ingredients. You mix them up. So since it already has the pilau masala that I usually do, the garlic, you don't really have to use a lot of salt. Just mix it up, make sure it gets evenly heated. I usually like how the colors change. You see, like from the pale red, the pale pink that comes from the sauce, and then it slowly turns into orange, then a bit of reddish with the tomato. Like, it's usually an interesting transition for me, like whenever you notice, whenever you're cooking. So you might ask, why do I have sugar over here? So with the concassé, this one that I'm using, I am going to add a bit of sugar because, like, to beat some of the tanginess from the ingredients that we have, if you add like a spoonful of sugar, roughly a spoonful, it's gonna come out really well. It's gonna be sweet. It's gonna complement the meatballs that we used over there. So we can, this is around a spoonful, just spread it around. But if you have a sweet tooth, you can add a bit more, you know, but not too much, you know. It's also a health hazard. Too much of something is not good for you. Then we also stir to make sure the sugar blends evenly. If you want to be a complete health freak, you could use honey instead of sugar if you want to supplement that. So as we wait for the water to boil, over here we add a bit of salt. Just a pinch of salt, because also remember the meatballs have salt, the sauce has salt, so the spaghetti doesn't really need a lot of salt. It's gonna be quite chaotic if you mix a lot of salt with all the ingredients. As you can see, they're burning up nicely. I usually advise whenever it comes to making meatballs, you don't necessarily have to, you can fry them. You can try and pan fry them instead of baking them, but I'd prefer using the oven because the oven bakes it more evenly from the inside to the outside. It's gonna be an even heat sauce, because if you bake it, if you pan fry it with, let's say, a pan like this, a deep pan like this, the oil is gonna like get the outside layer more ready than the inside. Like, you see it brown, but then on the inside it's still a bit red, unless you like medium rare meat. But you know, most Africans don't really like medium rare. But it's also nice, especially steak. If you try a medium rare steak, it really comes through. And also, you can also just add a bit of, since it's also going to complement the meatballs, which we mixed with the pilau masala thing. You can always just add a bit to bring a bit more flavor. And just mix it up properly. So if you like the really extra red sauce to be a deep red, you can use the tomato paste to make the dish more red, but just use around a spoonful, not a teaspoon, a tablespoonful of that. Don't use any more with the amount of tomatoes that I've used, just to give it that deeper red if you prefer that on your dish, because now it's become more of a reddish, an orangish with a bit of reddish hue. So now since the water is boiling, we can add the spaghetti. Oh, sorry. So remember, this is half a pack, the standard pack that we usually get in supermarkets. So I've used half a pack. I've just broken it into half, so it's gonna be easier to, it's a small sufuria. If you use a full one, it's going to be hanging out over here, and then some of them will burn with the heat on the side. So it's just easier to just break them in half to make it easier to mix up. So usually you can just leave your spaghetti just boiling with the water, but then I prefer keeping an eye on it because, like if you just leave it like that, even if it will boil properly and you've used the oil, a few bunches will stick together. So like always be ready with something like this. You just like toss it around once they become soft, so to make sure they don't stick together. Let's stir this a bit more.
Evolutionary process going on, but mankind won't be destroyed. The fact that you and I are working here today.
And now we can check again the taste and flavor, since we're sure the salt has diffused properly, and also the pilau masala. Good. Still a bit tangy though, so we can still add a bit more sugar. This is now another half a spoon now. So I'd advise usually in actual spoons. It's just that I'm used to the measurements now, so I prefer just using my hand. So remember, just move these around. You see, it's like some of them start sticking together like this. So it's good to move them around, but not too much, because spaghetti is also kind of like rice. If you move them around too much, they're gonna become ugali, like they start sticking together even more. So the meatballs are starting to dry up, which is just on time as the sauce is starting to get ready. So it's usually good to just make sure the meatballs are evenly like here's an example. One piece. So mine, I have to admit, it's not a perfect ball, but it's dried up nicely. So you just have to flip it to the other side to make sure it is evenly cooked, even at the bottom. Okay. So you have to flip them all around. The spaghetti is ready. We're just gonna plate everything. And you can either add the meatballs into the sauce once they're dried up properly from the oven, or you can just serve the spaghetti with the sauce and then also add the meatballs on top if you want them dry. So the choice is yours. It's just, I can put a few over here. Once the meatballs are ready and the spaghetti is ready, I'll just put a few in the sauce and also put a few dry on the side. So as you can see, they've come out pretty well. Some have been a bit broken up because of me trying to toss them, but it's, collateral damage for some good food. So you can put this on the side. These are the meatballs that we're going to prepare with the sauce. So we're going to start serving everything. The first dish, which will involve the dried meatballs, where we're going to start straining the water first. So we strain this water for the spaghetti. You have to be careful. If you don't trust yourself with your hand, of course, use two hands. You can always use a strainer. For as much water to drain out as possible. And then you mix it up a bit since it already has the oil. If you don't want to use oil to make sure it doesn't mix, you can also always use cold water. If you strain it out with hot water, you add some cold water so it makes sure it doesn't clump up together. So from here, I'm going to take this and just place it on the table a bit. And the sauce is almost ready. So we're going to just serve this first. You can try and scoop it all up. This is just a small side dish. Now this, the one that I'm serving is going to be the dry meatball portion. So as you can see, you pour the sauce on top of it. Just make sure it's enough to make the whole spaghetti thing saucy. And then now you add a bit of the meatballs, say like 2 or 3 pieces.
But mankind won't be destroyed. The fact that you and I are working here today is evidence of that.
And then now remember I told you that we're going to use a bit of the thyme as a garnish. So this is more of just a bit, you don't really need a lot. So just pull from here. See the pieces that you have left, just sprinkle it on top. And also with the coriander that I use, the dhania, you don't necessarily need a lot. You know, just to make the food look nice, you pick out a full leaf. You can either chop it up if you want, but I prefer using the full leaf to just make the food look a bit more appealing. So this is the dried meatballs on. Now the other one, we're going to put some of the meatballs inside of the sauce. Just drop it inside. Make sure they get infused with the flavor of the sauce. So now we're going to add a bit of heat for just around a minute or so. Make sure it boils together with the sauce. So as we wait for that 1 minute that I mentioned, we are going to start plating the other plate. So now we can turn this off. As we now plate the difference to make sure they don't roll around. Then now spread the sauce like that. So now with the sauce, again we're going to use some. So now I'm going to show you the other way to prepare the coriander garnish. Just going to chop it up a bit. Just make sure you collect the little tiny pieces of the strand, and then you just spread it around. So this is the other way to garnish your food with coriander. You can either put the whole leaves or just the tiny pieces, and then get just another strand of the thyme, and then just drop it. So you can also add a bit of black pepper if you're more of a spicy person. So these are the 2 ways that you can serve this dish, with the dried meatballs and also the one that is cooked in the sauce. Oh, So the last way for preparing this dish, we are going to mix the rest of this pasta, the spaghetti that's left. We're just gonna use it with the sauce, mix everything with the sauce, and also together with the meatballs. So I can show you the 3 ways to serve everything in here. So you dump that in, make sure you don't have any waste products. And then we can add the remaining meatballs inside also. Just dump them inside and then just stir it all up. Even the broken pieces also will come in handy over here. So now we mix it up. Make sure the heat is back on so that everybody gets the flavor. But you also have to be gentle when it comes to stirring, so even the full meatballs don't get broken up. So if you like your spaghetti mixed with the sauce completely, this is the ideal way of serving it, so you don't have the hassle of mixing it yourself. So again, you can also garnish it with the thyme. So remember, whatever you use to garnish has to be something that's edible. You can't garnish it with the leaves that you find outside, even though they look nice. It has to be something that the person that you're serving can eat, no matter what. So whenever you go to a restaurant and then you see they have some random leaves on your plate, it is always something that is edible compared to. So these are the 3 ways that you can prepare this dish. When you serve it, you can either serve it all mixed or with a dry, either served mixed with the dry meatballs on top with the sauce under, and you can do with the mixed up sauce and meatballs and with the dry spaghetti. Yeah. Thank you so much, viewers, for watching today's cooking segment on Val's Kitchen. So I hope you really learned a lot to make the mincemeat and the spaghetti with the thyme-based sauce, the concasse. You can check me out on my Instagram page. I am Chef Knight, or The Chef Knight. And on Facebook, I am under my company, Swahili Flavors. You can check me out. And also, my own personal account is Trevor Koech. I hope you guys learned something new over here. And also, I hope you guys enjoy impressing whoever you cook to. Enjoy the food, if it's you're cooking to yourself, and whoever you're cooking to, enjoy it. I encourage you guys to try the recipe that I showed you today, and share your photos on the page. Engage the page, also engage back. So I encourage you to try it.